All right. Welcome to the Rise Up podcast. I'm your host, Jonah Mitchell. And on this show, I help you rise up to your potential by simplifying everything that goes into improving your health, losing weight, improving body composition, whatever it is that's held you back from feeling like yourself. This podcast has helped make that whole process a lot fucking simpler. And a lot of times we make it a lot harder on ourselves just because we lack a lot of understanding, a lot of awareness. And I do my best to share my perspective on how I help people, and also get the opportunity to bring awesome people and get to have really cool conversations. And today I'm joined with Jordan. Jordan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fucking fantastic. It's been a while since I've had a guest on the show. I think it's been almost a month now, and I'm so happy that you're my first one in a long time. We're gonna have a lot of good stuff to talk about because you're gonna teach me a lot, and I'm really excited for this. Um, yeah, Jordan and I recently started working together, and now I get to be a team member with the Transformation Project, and me and Jordan have been in the same circle for probably a year or so, right? Yeah, and we finally have actually been able to get to know each other a little bit after that long. And I was like, "Hey, you're gonna be on my podcast." She's like, "Okay, cool." So, Jordan, tell the people a little bit about yourself. Who the hell is Jordan?
Yeah, who the hell am I? No, well, first, thank you for having me. It's really exciting and uh, very kind to say. Yeah, no, I am in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, little beach town on the East Coast, born and raised here. Um, and I actually just kind of fell into health and fitness. I'll kind of go that route as to who I am. Fell into it by accident. I just so happened to pass by a gym every day on my way to work, and I ended up dropping in one day and fell in love with it. And it also happened to be CrossFit. I didn't know what CrossFit was at the time, had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it ended up being a CrossFit gym, and I was hooked ever since. Um, so from there, I got different certifications in terms of personal training, CrossFit, kids CrossFit, level two, um, Power Monkey, all these things, and just really fell into that. Um, didn't know that's what I wanted to do, but I really liked it. And then from there, I started leaning more into the nutrition side of things and how that can not only affect performance, but your mentality. And I think with, with health and fitness, that's been the biggest impact that I've seen from is my mentality, and how I carry myself and things like that. And so I started leaning more into that, and I just found a big love for it. And so that has led me here. So now we're here.
Yeah, that's exciting. If you don't mind me asking, you know, what about the mentality side? Everyone is so focused on the physical, right? Oh, I start working out, I start dieting, I want to look better, right? Which is cool, right? There's nothing wrong with looking better, but me personally speaking from experience, even if before I addressed like what's going on up here in my brain, I looked really good, but almost things got a lot worse for me. So how did things like improve for you? Like you said, you carry yourself a bit differently. So what was the real difference point for you when it
Yeah,
came to the mental side?
for sure. I would almost say it probably wasn't the healthiest out the gate for me. I wasn't utilizing fitness in the safest, smartest way and didn't have a lot of knowledge behind it. So I'll start with that. But it was the only thing that ever shut my mind off. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say I had a bad childhood, but I definitely had a lot of road bumps that I'm still sorting through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't have much of a voice growing up because of it. And it was the first time that I was able to shut my mind off. And it was the first time that I ever stopped looking at my body for just having to be a certain way and it turned it into what I was capable of. So it quite literally got me out of my own head and
Mm-hmm.
started utilizing my body with purpose.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. And so it was almost like it was very therapeutic to me because it was fast paced enough. If anyone's ever done CrossFit who's listening, is that it was fast paced enough. I couldn't think about all the shit that was going on. Am I allowed to cuss on here?
Yes,
Uh,
please fucking cuss.
um, it was the only thing that made my mind stop thinking so much and stop racing so much and being so concerned about things that I had no control over. And so it really just kind of gave me a lot of freedom in my own mind, which is hard to do. It's hard to escape your own mind because it's
Yeah.
yours. And it was able to do that for me.
That's amazing. Yeah, I totally, and when we had our like one of our first conversations, like since we've been able to work together, I was like, holy crap, like we get along so well. We have such a similar background.
Yeah.
And I think it's not talked about enough, right? It's that side of health and fitness that is the true transformative nature. Right. The physical is super cool. And it's awesome to see the physical changes, but it's all shallow if you don't really understand the mental side of it and how it changed you, right? There was something that you lacked as you were going through life, and I don't want to share any details that you haven't yet, but there's parts of it that you just struggled with. And then when fitness found you, it was like that missing piece. It didn't solve all your problems, but it gave you a different look on how to see yourself and how to reignite who you are, right? You know who Terry Crews is, right?
No, do I? Should I?
You should. He's a very famous actor, big, bald, black, buff guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh God. He's in White Chicks. Have you
Oh,
ever watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
white chicks I have.
Yeah. So the
Yes,
the
I
guy,
have.
you'll recognize him. But anyway, he's become one of my, like, I don't want to say idols, but just like he inspires me a lot because his background was a lot of physical and mental abuse from his family, and he shared a lot of that growing up. And he had this really cool saying. He was on the Lewis Howes podcast, and he's talked a lot about his own mental health journey. And most people, they're not they're like Legos, right? A lot of people will point and say, "Oh, you're broken. You're not put together. Like you're broken." But in reality, all Legos come broken, and we have to put the pieces together in order to find who we are, right? And there's just a few things that's why I fell in love with health and fitness, because for the very same reason. There's parts of my childhood where I felt like I didn't have a voice. I felt like I had no control. I felt like I was unable to take care of the people around me. And as I started to get more into fitness and I started to understand myself more, right? And
Mhm.
when we understand ourselves, like you said, it started maybe not in the healthiest way, but most people, it's not always the healthiest way because they don't know what the healthiest way is. They have to kind of go through the trial and error stuff. But as we keep showing up and we start to find those pieces, like yours was helping shut your mind off, mine and helping or showing you that you can be really capable of awesome fucking crazy things because you're a CrossFit athlete and I think you're insane. But like it's super cool on all fronts, because once you like really dive into that, the physical side, it just amplifies, and I love that so much. So thank you again for sharing.
Sure.
It's super cool to hear all that kind of stuff. So now you're a coach, and you do you still coach in person, or is it just all online now?
I do not.
Okay.
I stopped, I think it was like last summer. I finished up with personal training. I like trickled out of the position that I was in because I was doing a couple different roles at the CrossFit gym I was at. Um, Personal training was hard to let go of because
Mhm.
those are more people that I see every single week.
Yeah.
And so you build a lot of connections like that. So that was super hard. But it's been very rewarding since, and a really good but also challenging transition,
Mhm.
kind of moving everything into online,
Yeah.
and at this capacity, but it's been a great experience.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It took me a long time because I started in gyms too. And like I always hated communicating on the internet. Like it's never worked out very well. Couldn't talk to women on the internet. It was never a good thing. Probably a good thing that happened because nothing stupid ever really happened because of that. But it's just always I didn't know how to show up as myself online, right? So then when everything happened, I was like, my entire life's on the internet now.
Hmm.
Okay, that's fine. It's an acquired taste, but it is definitely a challenge. But to be here, be on team with you, it's been really fucking cool. So I'm really excited. So we kind of were talking a little bit off air about the things that we really like coaching and teaching people, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, something that I could always learn a little bit more about is the health of women, right? Obviously, I am not a woman. I'll never be a woman and never truly understand what it's like to be a woman, right? So, you know, what has really, why has that been a subject for you that you've really fallen in love with and like and really dove into teaching other women?
It's interesting. Kind of the same way as I said, like I just fell into CrossFit and fitness and things like that. It was just by accident. It's the same thing. Like I never sought out to like be involved in women's health or period health, and like get excited about birth control. That was never my intention.
Mhm.
And I wasn't grown up around that either. Like my parents aren't doctors or anything. So like we're in the health world. So it's something entirely new to me. And I have this mentor. She was my old boss, Drew. She is someone I had always looked up to, and I remember that was like the first start of like discussing women's health was with her, in terms of my own and like looking into being off birth control and things like that. And so once I started looking down that path, I started reading a little bit more. And I'm not a reader,
Mhm.
but it was the only thing I was like interested in reading about. And the more I read on period health and women's health, I was like, holy shit, like why am I 26, 25 years old at the time starting to learn about this as a woman? And there's so much of this information that I don't know. And that was the most profound thing to me. Like, this is my own body,
Mhm.
and I have a whole system in terms of a monthly cycle that I have no idea how it works,
Mhm.
what it actually means. And that was the most interesting thing, I think, to me. And so once that kick started, it just kept going from there. I love learning about it. I love teaching about it. I don't know if I'll ever know enough because it's such a wild and unpredictable thing
Yeah.
almost. Um, but I think that's the most interesting thing to me is that as women, we don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
And so I think I would encourage any woman to start younger in terms of understanding your own health, like something that's so unique to you as an individual and as a human being, what your cycle actually means and how it relates to your health.
Mhm.
And that's something that I think most people miss out on is that it's actually very vital in terms of letting you know if something's going on in your body that you may have not been aware of.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. And like I said, I am no specialist. All I can do is continue to study, right? And do my best to understand what's going on. And from my own research, the reason why there's not a lot of understanding around women's health and how like it's normal for women to hop on birth control, right? It's just like this thing that everyone does. It's because there's just no understanding. There's no awareness of how it actually works, what it's actually telling you, other than it's that time of the month, right? You're no longer pregnant, or you're not pregnant, right? Like that's the basic thing. It's like you're either pregnant or you're not, right? That's about the general gist. And then, going through high school, there's a lot of scares of pregnancy. So it's like, get on birth control. Um, but you don't understand. Again, this is from my own studying, and I am no specialist, but when a woman is going through birth control, right, the pill, for example, and it is ingesting the artificial hormones to help regulate, uh, for birth control purposes. Jesus, I'm trying to make sure I watch my words here, because
Sure.
again, doing my best to understand. um you don't know how that affects other areas of your body, of your life, right? So what is the one thing that you've learned? Probably the most important, or I don't want to say most important, but what was the most shocking thing that you learned as you've done your own studies into women's health and birth control and all that fun stuff?
I think the most shocking, what I would say is that those who are on birth control, um, so let's just use the pill as an example because you have a placebo week to where you have a period. It's
Mhm.
not a real period. It's called a pill bleed or a synthetic bleed. And it is just the withdrawal of the hormones, synthetic hormones that are being pushed into your body to where your uterine lining sheds. So it's not a real period. And in order to have a real period, you have to ovulate. But hormonal birth control shuts down everything. And so, in terms of, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is when you're on birth control, you do not have natural hormones. Your hormones are shut off. So, you are quite literally shutting down a perfectly working system and pumping it with fake hormones to prevent something that is supposed to be natural to your body. And a lot of women experience bad periods, or I would say painful periods, irregular periods, a lot of conditions, symptoms, erratic periods. And what they do is get on birth control. That's the first thing that their gynecologist typically recommends. And I would even say young girls, because this happened to someone I know, she was having regular headaches. So may not even be necessarily correlated to her period, but she was put on hormonal birth control for it. Not because she was sexually active or anything, because she's having bad headaches. So again, we're just shutting down hormones. So if you fall in that line of having painful periods or bad symptoms and you get on birth control for that reason, look at it as if your engine light came on in your car and you took a piece of duct tape and covered it. Cool, you can't see it. It's not really an issue because you don't know it's happening. But when you take off that piece of tape, the check engine light is still there. So if you're 14, 15, or if you get on it even in your 20s and you're on it for years and you only got on it because of bad symptoms, that doesn't mean that your symptoms are going to be gone.
Mhm.
Anything, they're going to come back and possibly worse because your body has not been able to regulate its own hormones for X amount of years.
Yeah.
Which, did you have something you want to add?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. I'll remember.
Okay. So, and that's what's so interesting to me because now we're looking at a lot of women who are getting into late 20s, early 30s, late 30s who are now wanting to have a baby. And they've been on birth control since they were 14, 15, 16 years old, haven't regulated a single hormone on their own for the last 15 years, and are expecting to pump out a baby immediately. It can take a long time for your body to recover from that. Some people get lucky. I'll say that, like 1000%, it can easily happen for some, but not everyone. And that's where you're finding a lot of hormonal issues because you haven't regulated anything on your own. And you haven't learned what that feels like for yourself and how to navigate it on your own because you
Mhm.
shut down a perfectly working system.
Definitely. Yeah, and I just want to kind of hop in there really quick. And I'm definitely not someone who just hid their check engine light like literally with a piece of duct tape so I wouldn't have to go deal with it.
Yeah.
Um definitely never anything that I've done before. But it's so interesting to look at it in that way, right? That perspective is like most people, I mean, just the generation that we live in, it's we're used to take this pill, it's going to solve this issue, right? But the problem with any pill, medication, whatever it is, it's only addressing the symptoms, not the root,
Mhm.
right? And that's a huge, and again, that it's not anybody's fault, right? We just said in the beginning, nobody really understands what's actually happening. They don't understand that the process of creating and going through the luteal and the follicular phase of your cycle, right? I had to study on that one because I fucked it up when I was talking to you guys and Larissa. Um, that your body goes through the cycle of progesterone and estrogen and all these things that have to happen, and that they go through a cycle, and that's the monthly cycle. It goes through these phases and has to process and create different hormones. And when you shut that off, right, it's it has a lot of it just sends a very weird signal to your body, right? And everything is, our hormones are signal senders, right? And then when we're just constantly pumping, um what's the term?
Synthetic.
Synthetic, thank you. I couldn't think of it. I appreciate it. Synthetic hormones, right? It really, like, your body kind of just gets like, okay, I guess you don't need me to do this for right now. So getting things going naturally again takes some time, right? And then to address the part of like uncomfortable symptoms during a cycle, like, it's almost I feel like, as a man, a woman's period has been this like very negative, very bad thing, right? And as I continue to study, as I continue to learn, it's almost like a cheat code for women because it's another form of biofeedback. And
Yes.
yeah, and that's super interesting because if you're having painful symptoms, it's like that check engine light. Hey, something's off,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of these things are stress related, nutrition related, right? And stress encompasses a lot of things, not just the emotional stuff that most people are only perceiving. They don't know their actual extent of the stress that they're going through. But when you start to actually step away and start to pay attention to all these things and you start to get attuned to them, you start to look like, okay, I'm not only am I trying to improve my health, but I'm trying to optimize how my body actually functions. When you do that and focus on your health, right, and your cycle health, a lot of the things that you struggle with start to get a little bit better, right?
Mhm.
So when you're taking all this and you're helping people, women specifically, understand this, where do you start? Right? Like, do you address the people on birth control or want to come off of it? How do you handle the situation if anyone's curious?
Sure. So, as much as I'm an advocate for not being on birth control, everyone has their own circumstance.
Mhm.
What I can do is provide you with the best knowledge that I have without saying, hey, get off of it.
Yeah, exactly.
'Cause I would never want to do that by any means. I would like to just provide you with the facts and information, the things that I have found, and for you to make the best educated decision for you. Where I always start is simply getting clarity on if they are on it or off of it and for how long. So I have an understanding of what I'm working with. From there, most women aren't even tracking their cycle. If you're on birth control, it's a little bit more routine. If you're on the pill, obviously you should know exactly when you're starting or at least having your synthetic bleed. Could be different if you're on an IUD. Some of those you'll have periodic bleeding or no period at all, just depending. Um, but if you're off of it, I always have my women track their cycle. And day one will always be the day of your first full bleed to where you actually need to take action on it, wearing a pad or tampon or a cup. So I always have them track it because we can tell a lot by the regularity of your cycle. Is it really short? Is it really long? Are you skipping every other month? Like, what is that looking like? And that can tell a lot. So just getting down the basics. And along with that too is we know that weight can fluctuate on any given day
Yeah.
for 10,000 reasons. It's not alarming to us. And as much as we know, even as women, that we feel heavier or look more bloated around our cycle, for some reason, we still, if we see this scale jump, we're like, I've lost all my progress, like I've gained all this weight, XYZ. So I always have them track their weight as well around the first of their period or around the start. And so that way we can keep track of that data across months. So, for example, if you're a 200-pound female in October around your period, you'd weigh 200 pounds, but now you still feel a little bit bloated, or maybe you feel like you've gained inflammation or weight or anything, but you're still weighing in lighter around the start of your period. That's still progress. Even if the scale is still kind of jumping, that's still progress.
Hmm.
So it's good data to have to know like your fluctuations around your period and what's going on. Um, and so that's where I always start, is just getting in the rhythm of tracking and then noticing any severe symptoms, shifts in mood, any bad cramping, major fatigue, how are your workouts, things like that. And I oftentimes suggest like to pull back on intensity when it comes to working out during your period, to allow your body to just kind of rest, recover, and do its thing. And then you can get back to it once your hormones can kind of start coming back up a little bit. Um, so all that to say, I always start with getting clarity on knowing if they're on it, off of it, for how long, and getting comfortable tracking it so we can start noticing trends across months.
Yeah, and that's honestly, I'm glad you said that, because you can't really address an issue if you're not paying attention to it, right? If you're not understanding what is happening consistently, right? Just as if we're just dealing with weight loss in general, we need to understand where your calories are at consistently, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you lacking consistently, so that then we can make a more informed choice. Too many people are used to, I have a problem, I need you to solve it right now. And it's like, okay, I know
Yes.
you're uncomfortable. I totally get that, but we need more understanding. We need more data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I hate fucking numbers. I hate them so much. But when it comes to understanding trends, oh, I'm a nerd. I'm a huge nerd when it comes to numbers, right? Because the trends tell us so much than just the sporadic fluctuations, right?
Totally. It's my favorite thing. I love when women get on the phone with me. They're like, I gained weight. And I'm like, okay, when's your cycle starting? They're like, I just started. I'm like, okay.
Okay. All
Like, cool.
right.
And they're like, well, I'm still heavier this week than like last week. I'm like, yeah, but you're still lighter than you were a month ago from when you started your period. And so
Oh, the
yeah,
trend.
yes. And they're like, okay. I'm like, yeah, we're okay.
Yeah, and it's really important to zoom out, right?
Yes.
And in those times, like I think we had like a team meeting about this, where we're talking about like talking a client off the ledge who's kind of freaking out about the fluctuations of their weight. It's like, hey, like it's normal to have these fluctuations. It's scary, especially with someone who struggled with their body weight for so long, right? Any sign of regression is like, oh, panic button, got to change everything again. But in reality, when you zoom out 3, 6, 12 months and you realize, holy shit, I'm actually down like 15, 20 pounds.
Mhm.
And like you look at the whole trend, it's like, damn, it's constantly been going down. Yeah, it's had its sporadic ups, but like the bigger arch, I'm gonna make a video about this where it's just like looking at a trend. Like when you're looking at it for like a week, it's like, oh my God, it's all over the place. So you zoom out from 6 months ago, it's like, oh, it's way down. But that little reminder is like, hey, you're all good. It's okay to freak out. It's okay to have these reactions. But again, when we look at the data and what's actually happened because we're paying attention, then we know how to like walk off that ledge and be like, or not, or pull back from the ledge, not walk off the ledge, and
Getting off the ledge.
and just come back to like this normal state. Like, okay, I'm okay. Just got to get out of my head and, just look at it with understanding. That's it. The more we can understand, the more that we can actually address the real issue, not just the symptoms, right? I think that's the biggest thing here is understand the real issue and not focus on just the symptom, which is
And
hard.
it is. But along with that, those symptoms are valuable information.
Oh, yes,
Because,
of course.
and you touched on it a little bit earlier of saying like people thinking periods are this huge negative, and honestly, people look at it like it's super gross as well, and it's just not. It's just it is what it is. It's a part of your body, and it is what keeps the world going round and bringing more babies into the world. So it's really freaking cool. Um, but we have demonized our cycle to being this painful, gross, inconvenient thing that we have to go through every month. And so we're like, well, we don't want to deal with it, so let's shut it off. But painful periods are not normal. I want to make that clear. Some symptoms are okay. I mean, given what your body is going through, it's releasing itself, essentially releasing an egg and saying, okay, no more. We're going to shed. We're not pregnant. But painful to where you can't get out of bed, can't focus on work, can't keep your head up, those kinds of symptoms do not have to be your every month. And so if you are experiencing anything that is making you feel incapable of your day to day in terms of your period, that needs to be addressed and not by birth control. Again, that is you putting tape over the engine light and saying, it's not my problem anymore until you take the tape off. And now it's your problem, probably even 10 times worse. So you do not have to go through that excruciating pain of a period every month.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of things you can do when you are off birth control and you have actual biofeedback of understanding, like, okay, I was really stressed the past couple of months. Maybe this is why I'm so like having such a bad period, or like these certain foods are affecting me and my skin and all these things. Your body is incredibly smart and intuitive and in tune with what you ingest and intake, and it will reflect in your cycle.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot that you can do in terms of your movement, your stress, your lifestyle, your food, that can start improving those symptoms. And if you do that for an extended period of time, you would see a lot of progress. And then at that point, you have the knowledge to say, hey, I'm still experiencing these abnormalities. And then you can, you know, where you need to dial in and like maybe go see a specialist to where you might have something going on. So you can do so much if you actually get to the root, which is what we've been talking about. But yeah, I just, people have just made it seem like it's this horrible, inconvenient, painful experience that we're supposed to have. And that's just not the case.
Hmm. When in reality, it's saying something. It's like, hey, not
Something is wrong.
good.
Like the
Yeah.
lights are flashing, being like, get help, like do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And I think you touched on it really well. Like an extended period of time, right? You can't just say, I'm doing this for a week. I see no improvements whatsoever. Compare that 1 week to how long you've neglected your own cycle and period health in general, right? Like if you've dealt with issues with irregularities, Jesus, um, horrible symptoms, bad, lots of pain, right? You've dealt with that for the vast majority of your life when it comes to your cycle, right? If you only give yourself a week to see any improvements, that's really not
Yeah.
fair. You can't do that. You have to really buy in and say, okay, you're undoing a lot of the damage that was being done that you were not aware of. It's not your fault. You didn't know. Most women, i.e., you didn't learn about it until you were 25, 26, right?
Yeah.
And you've been on birth control before, haven't you?
Yes, I got on it fairly young.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll be honest, the only reason I got on it was because I knew the other girls were also on it. That was the thing to do.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, this is my life now. Now I have to get on birth control, so I'm not pregnant. But I had no one discuss anything with me over it. You
Mhm.
know, like doctors, mentor, no one told me anything aside from as soon as I was like, I want to be on birth control, they're like, great, we got you.
Mhm.
No one gave me any information. And in that moment when I was that young, again, I just thought that's what I was supposed to be doing. And so I didn't think anything of it. And then now, I guess fast forward to when I was about 25 or 26, and I was like, I don't think this is this is right. And so I got off of it, and I'll say probably not until probably like 9-ish months. I'd say like 9 to 12 months post getting off of birth control. I had a very strange surge of hormones. My skin completely broke out. I felt very erratic. I felt crazy, and I remember
This
I
is,
was
I'm sorry, this is when you were coming off the pill?
this was when I was off of it. Yeah, I had an
Yeah.
IUD, and this was months after. So again, in terms of like over extended period of time, I was pretty good for a long time, and then I think I got to a point where my body was finally regulating everything on its own. It was like almost like that final push of synthetic hormones out of my body. But I just felt completely erratic, you know? And so that was for probably like 1 to 2 months, and then it mellowed out, and I've been extremely well since. And it's been the coolest experience to be that in tune with my body, to know like, gosh, you don't even think about it because there's times of the month, like when you're off of it, if you start paying attention, depending on where your hormones are at, you are either more social or more reserved, more flirtatious, or more reserved. You feel stronger, your workouts are a lot better, you feel like your stamina's increased. Like there's just different times of the month, depending on your cycle and where you're at and where your hormones fall, that plays a huge role. And if you can dial in on that, you can really maximize your life. Like, like, okay, this week my progesterone's up, I'm feeling good, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna get all my creativity out, do all this stuff that I need to do for work, because I know in about 2 weeks that's gonna drop and I'm gonna need a little bit more time to myself. And that's really freaking cool. Like you can utilize that energy and to feel your absolute best.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. I actually had a question from one of my clients literally last night about that specific cycle where you'll have your higher you'll have the a higher capacity to feel stronger, more energized, more creative, then understand that you'd have the time that you need to reserve. So, how would you help someone who's trying to figure this out for themselves?
Yep. So first, she's off birth control?
She is on it, I believe. I have not confirmed that with that. So that's another question I have for you afterwards, but we'll talk about that in a second.
So I would say it's going to be a little less relevant if she's on it, because her hormone cycle is not the same as if she was natural,
Mhm.
or had a natural cycle. Um, so that might be a different scenario. So, but for someone who is off of it, first thing comes down to tracking your cycle. So again, first day of your first full bleed, so where you actually have to wear something, I would start keeping like a section in your notes for that. And I know a lot of women do actually use like apps, like I don't know what they're called, but it tells them.
Oh, I think
Yeah,
is
I
a
think
big
there's a
one.
few. And it tells you, quote unquote, when your cycle is. The reason I don't like that is because it's too by the book. It's too much like, this is the day you're ovulating, this is the day your period starts, which in reality, like depending on your life stressors, what's going on in your life, and how you've treated your body over the past couple weeks, that can differentiate. That can look entirely different. Um, and it takes multiple periods. So it takes a repeated pattern of quote unquote abnormal periods for there to be a possible issue. If you have one random weird period that happens, which happened to me a couple months ago, it doesn't mean anything's wrong. It's just your body's literally responding to that time of your life.
Mhm.
But all that to say, we got to track. So track first day before first bleed. How long is your period week where you're bleeding? And keep track of that. Is that consistent? And then from there, you just have to be in tune a little bit of noticing, like, where do I feel more social? Where do I feel more reserved? Where do I feel more energized or a little bit more tired, more irritable? Start taking notes of those symptoms and where they lie. And then you can start again noticing that trend. So it takes a little bit of time because we're looking at a whole monthly cycle here
Yeah.
that's anywhere between like 28 to 35 days. And so you just have to start paying close enough attention to it to where you can write it down. So just keep a notes in your phone. But I do have a few books that I would recommend in terms of dialing in on that and how to maximize your workouts, your food, and everything along with your period, like cycle syncing. It's really cool.
That's awesome. What are the books? Tell me the books right now.
Okay, so let me tell you all of them. So I would recommend these for anyone who wants to learn more about their cycle for different reasons or different areas. So first one's Period Repair Manual. And I also love that they're all like pink. So Period Repair Manual by Laura Bryden. I hope I got that correct. This was one of the first ones that I read, but it's essentially about natural treatments for better hormones and better periods. So this one goes through all the different types of birth control as well. So you have an understanding of what they can all look like, what they actually do in your system, and then just goes through of your entire cycle and like what to expect, what you shouldn't expect, and if this happens, this is what you do if you have these types of symptoms. So it's all about just healing your hormones, and just healing your cycle altogether. So this one's good for just a general understanding of what's actually going on. And I would say this is probably one of the easiest ones to read. I think she wrote it in a very relatable, understandable way. it's like just enough science to be like, okay, I understand it, but like without it being like way over the head.
Yeah, which is
So,
how I like to consume things.
yes, totally. The next one is In the Flow. So this one, I'm gonna butcher her name. I think it's Elisa Vitti, Vitti,
Vidi,
Vitti,
maybe? We
something
don't know.
along that lines.
You can
Um,
Google it. We'll figure it out.
it's called In the Flow. So this is about unlocking your hormonal advantage and revolutionizing your life. So she goes through a lot of cycle syncing methods, 28-day plan with recipes, workouts, a daily planner, and biohacking toolkit. So again, just like really dialing in on your symptoms and maximizing. So your client would probably like this book, maximizing different times of the month to your advantage. So those days that you are feeling more reserved, what kind of workouts and kind of foods you need to be eating to help in that. And same thing when it comes to the opposite. So when you're feeling more social and creative and a little more productive, what can you do? What can you eat? And how can you align your workouts like that for the most amount of energy and to support your hormone health? So love that one. And then this one I'm still reading. It's called The Fifth Vital Sign. So this is essentially just like mastering your cycle. This one is pretty in depth in terms of information so far. So I would say I would recommend Period Repair Manual first, and then this one. But yeah, it's about optimizing your fertility. So it goes into a lot of detail about your cycle and like even your cervical mucus and things like that. Has been very interesting to learn about, which again, I think most people think is like, ew, that's gross. But you learn so much about your body depending on what kind of mucus you're producing, which is
Yeah.
incredibly fascinating. So this is another one that really just dives into healthy cycle, mastering your cycle, really understanding your cycle, and things like that. So I think all of these would be really great books for anyone to read to understand your period a little bit more. Especially, I'm going to touch on this one again. So the Period Repair Manual, I would definitely read this one, like any female, because again, it goes through all the birth controls and you can get a better understanding of like, this is what's actually happening in your body. And then you can make the educated decision of like, is this right for me or is this not?
I think that's huge to
So
touch
those are
on.
my
Yeah, I love that. And it's still their decision, right?
yes.
If you want to stay on birth control, that's totally fine. If the worst case scenario is pregnancy, there's nothing wrong with birth control, right? And that's totally your decision. However, if you want to understand yourself, your body a little bit more, like then it's better to educate yourself than just like make a an uneducated decision based
Yes.
off of what you just hear. Like, oh yeah, I might as well just do that because most people do that and
Yeah.
they're not prepared for what's going to happen without the actual understanding of it all. So I like that a lot. So before I let you go, Jordan, unless you had one more thing, I kind of cut you off there.
Yes. So the only other thing I'll say with that too, they also dive into it's called FAM, so fertility awareness method.
Mhm.
So that is for understanding your ovulation and the timing as to when you can actually get pregnant. Something that again a lot of people don't know is that you're only fertile about 6 days out of the month.
Mhm.
And a lot of that has to do with your cervical mucus. And so learning about that and understanding, so even if you are not on birth control and you're trying to figure out how to navigate that without getting pregnant right now, that is another method to utilize that is fairly effective. And they have all the statistics in there as well. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but it's actually a very valuable method to use if hormonal birth control is not your answer and you're still trying to not be pregnant.
That's
So
cool.
yeah. Oh God, I think it's so cool.
I love watching you talk about this. You get so bubbly and it excites me.
I know. It's so funny. My roommate, if we're just yapping about anything, and she wants to get me worked up, she'll be like, "Yeah, tell me about birth control," and it just sets me off. It's so funny.
She broke the dam. Now we're just going to be talking about it
Yes.
forever.
I'm like, well, let me tell you.
Don't get me started because you won't get it stopped. That's awesome. I love that. So I wanted to ask you this because we talked a lot about the benefits of moving away from it, understanding and tracking your cycle, right?
Mhm.
For women who have yet to do that, right?
Mhm.
what are the best things that they can be doing to take care of themselves, even if they're still on birth control?
Hmm. I would say quality of food and still stress management. Those are two of the biggest things that I think can impact poorly or negatively
Mm-hmm.
to your entire system without you fully realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Stress, especially because it's not tangible.
Oh yeah, stress is
um,
so hard to talk about.
it's not tangible. It's, like food, you're consuming it and, you can hold it, you can eat it. We know mentally if it's quote unquote good for us, bad for us, the most healthy, the most not, we know all of that, but like it's still tangible. Stress is not. But you'd be surprised how much stress can actually affect your system and your hormones, even though you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say focus on the quality of your food and managing your life stressors, the ones that are within your control. And then also read, learn, educate, educate. So then
Yes.
and then after that, you can make whatever decision you want.
Yeah, I love that. And just to kind of piggyback off of those two, stress management and food quality, healthy food isn't just healthy because it's green, right? It's healthy because the vitamins and minerals and amino acids that are present inside of them are literally the building blocks to hormone productions that are going to help us feel better. Our
Mm-hmm.
cells are made of what we eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a fact of just being eating healthy. It's like, oh, because it's the color green, so it must be healthy. It's what's inside, right? And the foods that are deemed quote unquote unhealthy just lack nutrient density, right?
Yeah.
No food is good or bad. It's either nutrient dense or nutrient devoid. And if your diet consists of low quality foods, meaning they have not very many vitamins and minerals inside of them, that's what a lot of the issues, a lot of the internal stress that can be going on that could be affecting hormonal structure and cycle dysregulation, because it just lacks the nutrients and the building blocks to actually operate effectively. And then stress management, my favorite thing is saying start being proactive with your stress management instead of reactive, because most people, all they do is like they only take care of themselves when everything's on fire, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, I have no idea what to do. And so I'm just going to take my day. I'm going to give my treat myself day when they have months of time between that where they're constantly just adding fuel to the fire of the stressful lives, be it with their jobs, with their kids, with their spouses. Everything is stressful. So doing something small for yourself, like you said, educate yourself. Like reading is so cool. Like stress management doesn't have to be this meditative like sit crisscross applesauce. It's anything that just helps you bring present to yourself,
Yeah.
and that's the most important thing. It's just like give yourself that little bit, and a little bit goes a long fucking way, especially when you do it consistently. I love that, Jordan. You're a goddamn rock star. That was super fun to listen to. I learned a lot, and I'm going to send this directly to my client who literally last night was asking me this question. I was like, I am not educated enough. I'm studying, but I can't answer these questions effectively.
Yeah. You kind of just nailed it with the be proactive instead of reactive. It's the same way that people say, like, you know, your health really only matters when you're really sick. And that's the only thing that you're looking for is, when you've been like curled up on the bed, like ill as can be, the one thing that you want is your health.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about anything else. Like, I just want to feel better. So it ties into that as well. So just rather than waiting for shit to hit the fan, start understanding your body and your system and how it responds, and like learning to take care of it, including your cycle. You would Anyone would be unstoppable after that.
Damn right. Just like you're unstoppable. We're all
Yeah.
unfucking stoppable when we learn to understand ourselves just a little bit better. Awesome. All right. One more thing I have for you, Jordan, and I'm gonna let you go. If people want to find you, how can they?
Oh Lord, you can just find me anywhere.
That's not
No,
true.
that's not true at all. You can't. Just in a sweet little town in Wrightsville Beach. But no, I'm on Instagram. I think it's Jay Shaw, JAYYSHAW. Um, and then on Facebook in the Transformation Secrets group.
Awesome. I
See
love
me.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll also have notes to the books we discussed
Yes.
and links to your social media in the notes as well, so people can go through and just like, oh, that was a cool book. I want those, and they'll just have the things to find them. So thank you so much, Jordan. This was an absolute blast. I learned a lot. I know anyone who listens is going to learn a lot, and yeah, I really really appreciate your time. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Of course, it was so fun.
All right, I'll talk to you later and see you guys on the next one.